In this world, the immortal gods do not need to pay attention to the responsibilities brought by their power, but only enjoy joy in infinite life. This is a distorted world. Under the control of gods, human growth relies on the sacrifice of beasts. Only love worthy of praise is the main melody of this world. The essence of soul power, the disappearance of soul guides, the role of soul rings, and the relationship between soul beasts and humans are all not buried under the yellow sand of time. So, exploring the truth of the world, the ancient tyrants who transcend time will bring this hopeless world back to life in the ashes. The ultimate transmission monster stands tall on the earth, emitting a roar that shakes heaven and earth. This book expands the original worldview by subjectively describing the psychology and choices of the characters, and has a unique understanding of the power system. I have my own job and a disabled party member, so I can only say that I will work hard to update until the end of this year. New book, I hope everyone supports me. Key words of the novel. Ultimate transmission of the terror beast standing on the Douluo continent without a pop-up window. Ultimate transmission of the terror beast standing on the Douluo continent. Complete collection download. Latest chapter reading. Ultimate transmission of the terror beast standing on the Douluo continent. Chapter 1 Preface. Truck plus 1 point and the New World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Preface. Truck plus 1 point and the New World. Finally, activate the ultimate evolutionary medicine in your hand, excluding the grey Lioli and little horn dragons in the graveyard. Summon my dinosaur brother from the special deck, ultimate transmission of monsters. With a slightly excited voice from a man wearing a hat, his hands quickly searched through the decks and picked out one of them to take a picture on the table. There were 5 cards on the table, each with the words, Ultramaya Zalkin, Crystal-Winged Harmony Dragon, Evolutionary Emperor Half-Bird Dragon, Dark Dragon Star Spicy Map, and the just-captured Ultimate Conduction Monster. Finally, I activated the effect of the Starry Green Corridor Beast in my hand, returning the excluded Grey Flowery to the deck, summoning myself to play, and finally transforming into a Super Thunder Dragon. Alright, stop and stop, I threw. The man across from him put his cards in front of him and in his hand back into the deck and shuffled them, saying, Your kid is not right. How can you handle the Dragon God Formation and Green Corridor Beast? Aren't these 2 only the next one? I saw the man wearing a hat also packing his cards, saying, This is the bond, okay, you know the bond of a hammer with dozens of sets of cards. Yes, I'm not tied to the deck anymore, okay. We played late today. Do you want to go eat together? No, I have to rush to work early tomorrow. Jane's Classic Bag 3 is about to be released, and the new Japanese dinosaur card is also coming. I have to take the dinosaurs home and leave. The man in the hat waved his hand, put on his backpack, and pushed the door open as he walked out. In the next moment, a large truck drove by at full speed, and the figure of the man wearing a hat disappeared in front of everyone. Douluo continent. Outside Holy Soul Village, a man holding a sickle and carrying a large basket on his back was walking through the mountains. Although he had a strong physique, the wrinkles on his face and some white hair on his head also showed that he was quite old. It's so hot today, let's go replenish some water first before continuing to pick mushrooms, the man muttered to himself, turning the direction and walking towards the stream. Just as he walked to the stream, he found a black object placed under a big tree. The man walked in and looked closely, only to find a black fur sheet wrapped around a child. The man picked up the child and saw a pendant hanging around the neck of the sleeping child, with the word ancient written on it. My wife passed away early and didn't have any children. It seems that God didn't want me to be lonely and end my life before sending you to my side. The words on this pendant may be your surname, Mu, you will be called Guyu in the future. Perhaps awakened by the man's voice, the child in his arms opened his eyes, waved his hands around, and made a vague voice in his mouth, Where am I? Why can't I see clearly? Time flies, 6 years have passed. Xiao San, let's go. Grandpa said he wanted you to come find him with me today, as if he had something to tell you. A cute-looking boy with deep eyes said to a boy who looked ordinary and looked straight at the rising sun. Got it, Xiao Yu. I'll go back and finish my dad's meal first, and then go find you and Grandpa Jack. The boy, known as Xiao San, picked up the basket on the ground and followed the footsteps of the child named Xiao Yu. Ask, is there anything I need to do? Tell me to come to your house early in the morning. It should be about the awakening of the martial soul. After all, we are also 6 years old. Calculating the time, it should happen that the soul master from the martial soul hall will come to our village in the next few days. Yeah, I forgot about the awakening of my martial soul. The third person's eyes lit up. I don't know what kind of martial soul we can awaken. I'm really looking forward to it. Didn't you ask Uncle Tang? You asked, Uncle Tang hasn't used martial souls at home. The mistress spread his hands and said, I asked, but my dad didn't tell me or show me his martial soul. I don't know if it's because his martial soul is ordinary. When I asked my mom what his martial soul was, he seemed angry and went into the room. Do you remember what I said before, mistress? Guess what your father's martial soul is, you asked. It should be a tool like a hammer, or it could be a metal like an iron block. I even guessed it was an element like a flame, but you said you read in a book that elemental martial souls like flames usually have innate soul power and can become soul masters. My father is just a blacksmith, so it's unlikely that he is an elemental martial soul. And you have also said that there is a connection between martial souls and people's work professions. Although it may not be accurate, people who use martial souls often clarify their work according to the martial soul. If a hoe or sickle belongs to the martial soul, they will become a farmer. If a hammer belongs to the martial soul, they will become a blacksmith. If a gun or knife is used, they will become some professions that require combat, such as guards or security guards. My father is a blacksmith, probably a hammer. Okay, you remember quite well, kid. Even if Uncle Tang refuses to say anything, you still have a bottom line. Guyu said to the mistress, then let's separate here. After you finish your meal for Uncle Tang, come to my house and have lunch at my house. After finishing, take some food back to Uncle Tang and go fishing in the same place in the afternoon. By the way, I'll tell you that I have some new ideas. Okay, then I'll leave first. I'll tell Dad I'll be there as soon as possible. The third person turned around and ran towards home, waving his hand back as he ran. Guyu stood still, watching the mistress leave, muttering to himself in a voice so subtle that even if he was stuck next to him, he couldn't hear clearly. Tang-san, we have finally reached the starting point of this fate. I hope this period of effort won't be in vain. Guyu looked up at the sky and said, I never expected to appear here and even become the grandson of old Jack. I don't know if I can successfully awaken my soul power. It's such a damn world. Forget it, I don't want so much anymore. Guyu shook his head and said, success or failure depends on tomorrow. Whether or not he can awaken his soul power, at least the first node of Tang-san's life should be able to be changed smoothly. If he has soul power, then the second node can also be changed. But if he doesn't have soul power, then whether the second node is smooth or not and the subsequent changes are beyond my control. At the end of the day, why am I in this world? It's not necessary to just send me to another world with a one-way ticket. Fortunately, I am familiar with it and now it's a peaceful world. Otherwise, as a modern person who hasn't even killed a chicken, I might have voted before the start of the game. If I were the protagonist of a novel, then at least my soul power would be stable, and there might be a system where my golden fingers take off. But this is reality, what should I do? After finishing speaking, Guyu crouched down with his head in his hands, stood up again after a while, and touched his stomach. I'm hungry, let's go back to eat first. After finishing, he ran towards home. New book, I hope everyone supports me. From this chapter, you should also see that this book is different from the current mainstream. It does not define Tang San as a pure and indestructible villain. I have some different views on this character, and I hope everyone is willing to continue reading. I will work hard to bring you an interesting story. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Before Awakening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Before Awakening. Grandpa Jack, Xiao Yu, I'm here. There was a knock on the door, followed by Tang San's voice. Xiao San, you came just in time. Take the freshly cooked egg and eat it. A man with white hair took out an egg from a bowl, shook it between his hands, and handed it to Tang San. Thank you Grandpa Jack, I'm not polite. Tang San knocked the egg on the edge of the table, peeled it off, blew it, and then ate it. Tang Hao, that guy knows how to drink. His family is so run down. Why don't we do more work and save some money? What should the mistress do if she gets married in the future? Old Jack slammed the table and cursed loudly. Just as some indecent words were about to be blurted out, the knocking sound of dong 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 rang out again. Guyu jumped off the chair and ran to open the door. He saw a young man in white overalls and a black cloak behind him standing at the door, with a badge carved with 3 long swords on his left chest. Guyu smiled and said to the person outside the door, Brother Tao, you also came to our village this year. Seeing that Guyu was opening the door, Su Yun Tao also smiled and touched Guyu's hair with his hand, saying, You little rascal, since you've read all the books in our library, you haven't come to find us anymore. Master Ma Zayunuo is still saying that he hasn't seen you in the Martial Soul Hall these days. There's nothing I can do. I've finished reading all the books, and if I go over there, I'll end up being played with as toys by Cece and Grandpa Mathiano, Guyu said, sticking out his tongue. You little slippery person, Su Yuntao chuckled and then arched his hand at old Jack. Jack Village Chief, this year I will also be here to awaken the martial souls of the children in Holy Soul Village. Have you arranged the time and address? Old Jack stood up and gently bowed to Su Yuntao, Master Su, I also need to trouble you this year. I have already told families in the village who have children of appropriate age that the time will start at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, at the Martial Soul Hall in the center of the village. Sure, Su Yuntao nodded. I'll disturb your house today. Who's that child? Su Yuntao pointed to Tang San. Guyu said, that's my good friend Tang San. He's having breakfast with us today. Xiao San, let me introduce you. This is Master Su Yuntao from the Martial Soul Hall of Nodding City, a great soul master with 2 rings. He's very kind and I take good care of him while reading in Nodding City. Su Yuntao laughed and vigorously rubbed Guyu's hair. You little slippery guy would also call me Su Yuntao Master. If something happens, Master Tao is fine, isn't he? Tang San is fine, and Xiao Yu often mentions you to us, saying that you are his best friend and often takes care of him. Just call me Tao brother like him, and I'll call you Xiao San too. Tang San bowed and said, Xiao Yu also often takes care of me. He often talks to me about things in Nodding City and says that you all take good care of him, answering many of his doubts. Alright, you guys have talked enough. My third and I still have to go fishing. Brother Tao, take your time chatting with Grandpa, let's go, third. Guyu shook his head and threw Su Yuntao's big hand aside, pushed open the door, and rushed out, making a face at Su Yuntao while running. Tang San said to old Jack and Su Yuntao, Jack, Grandpa Tao, I'll go fishing with Xiao Yu first and come back at noon. After that, he pushed open the door and rushed out, Xiao Yu, wait for me. Old Jack and Su Yuntao blinked at each other and said, I have freshly cooked eggs here. Master, would you like one? Yes, Su Yuntao gritted his teeth. On the other hand, Tang San caught up with Guyu whistling and said, Xiao Yu, your relationship with Soul Master is really good. Guyu waved his hand and said, it's nothing, I just had a little more communication with him while reading, and I also gave him some advice on his martial soul skills. Speaking of which, Xiao San, Guyu turned his head to Tang San. Have you ever thought about adding soul rings if your martial soul awakens and you have soul power that can add soul rings? Not yet, although you have told me many things you have seen in the books of the martial soul hall. The 8 characters have not been skimmed yet, and it is useless to think without soul power. Do you want to consider me, then? Guyu pointed to himself. As the smartest person in the history of Holy Soul Village, I have read a lot of books and can definitely arrange your soul skills from Soul Master to the final title Douluo properly. Okay, I can't say anything about you. If you can really awaken your soul power smoothly, I'll just follow your arrangement to add soul rings. Tang San shook his head and said perfunctorily. Your tone is not quite right. How could you talk to a martial soul research master like me like this? Let me tell you, Balabarabra. At noon, Tang San left first because he brought food back to Tang Hao. Guyu lay under the shade of a tree, watching the rustling leaves blown by the wind. Guyu checked his plan again. Tang San, according to the book setting, is an external disciple of the Tang clan in Bashu. Tang clan is a sect known for its hidden weapons and poison techniques. Such sects usually have only 2 ways to survive. One is to serve as mercenaries, take on assassination missions, and earn wages to maintain the development of the sect. The other is to serve as the white gloves of those in power, like Japanese ninjas, to act as warriors, assassinate political enemies, and gather information. As an external disciple, Tang San may have been brainwashed by loyalty to the sect, but it shouldn't be very serious. After all, he has secretly learned the core skills of the internal sect and may still hope to realize his self-worth. Moreover, the majority of external disciples are likely to be sold to powerful individuals as death warriors. If he is too loyal to the sect, he will be returned. The reason why he became the kind of person who lived or died as a Tang clan ghost is probably because before the awakening of his martial soul, Tang Hao couldn't give his family the feeling, and there might even be cold violence. There was no one in the village who had a good relationship with him, and even emotions couldn't be vented, which made him beautify the Tang clan in his memory and comfort me. That's why he talks about Tang clan rules and the way to death every day. Now that I have become his friend, I have a friend of the same age who can satisfy the desire for communication and often takes him home to eat and drink well. The pain of these 6 years is not as severe as in the original book. In addition, over the years, many Confucian and Taoist ideas have been subtly discussed, along with the core values of 8 honors and 8 shames, and other miscellaneous things. The foundation can be said to be firmly established. As long as you wait for the successful awakening of your martial soul and separation from Tang Hao, be careful not to have any contact with Yu Shaojiang and those scumbags from Shrek Academy in the future. You can at least ensure that you won't become as abnormal as in 2 and 3. The basic moral concept of right and wrong can still be preserved. P.S. This book will expand the description of Douluo continent as a real world, so it will make very subjective. Note that it is subjective, private and secondary settings for some bugs in the original work. Some will refer to the follow-up of the original work, and the social background, cultural environment, etc. will also be described. Everything will be mainly described in the book. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Reorganizing the Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Reorganizing the Plan. In the early stages, there was a behavior of wanting to kill the gatekeeper for old Jack's sake, and at least there should be a desire to repay the kindness. The double standards of protecting the short that appeared later, looked down upon people, referred to them as brothers when there were benefits, and ignored these issues when there were no benefits, probably caused by Tang Haoyu, Xiao Gang, and Shrek students. Tang Hao, titled Douluo, if he hadn't noticed something wrong with Tang San, I wouldn't have believed it. It's probably because he found something wrong with Tang San, but there are no legendary stories like giving up and rebirth in this world, so there's something wrong and I don't know why. Therefore, he didn't bring Tang San back to the sect for better education and faced Tang San with a cold and violent attitude. The problem he brought to Tang San was that he casually harmed innocent people, as long as he could seek revenge. No, it should be revenge, nothing else matters. Douluo, the secret chamber who clearly wanted to kill your wife, is not BB Dong. It's like someone sitting at home from the sky, and you haven't killed anyone. BB Dong helped you repair the knife. You don't have to treat someone to a meal, it's okay. He also raised a son and ruined decades of dreams. There are also things that went wrong with the death of the Blue-Silver Emperor. Although it was mentioned in the novel, it is now the real world. The book says that Tang Xiao and Tang Hao also went on a team adventure with the Blue-Silver Emperor. After Tang Xiao left, the Blue-Silver Emperor and Tang Hao became husband and wife. They were discovered by the people of the Martial Soul Hall after getting pregnant, and Qianshu and Ji attacked them while giving birth. After giving birth to Tang San, they offered sacrifices to Tang Hao, who had just risen to level 90. There are too many questions, we need to minimize the contact between Tang San and Tang Hao as much as possible. He has too many doubts. Then there's Yu Xiaojiang, the most suitable adjective is refined and despicable. Even if we ignore that chaotic relationship between men and women and only focus on his self-proclaimed best martial soul knowledge, we can only use a nonsensical phrase to describe it. There are no useless martial souls, only useless soul masters. Is he using the shortest possible words to describe himself? The semi-finished golden holy dragon soul, which clearly has a soul ring, is the most likely opportunity to change his life against the heavens. There are also 2 additional attack skills instead of strengthening skills. As long as he seizes one of them as a state-strengthening skill, he can change his life against the heavens. If I were the golden holy dragon, I would kill him in one breath. Is there a more foolish theory that plant-based martial souls can absorb the soul rings of animal soul beasts, not just those of plant soul beasts? Guess whether the soul rings of Haotian hammer come from animal soul beasts or an antique hammer that has been used for 100,000 years. Adding animal-type soul rings to the martial soul formed by soul beasts like blue-silver grass with strong vitality as their core is not enough, but also adding poison attributes. Does the toxins added to the first few soul rings really work in the later stage? A blue-silver grass with innate soul power, and the second martial soul is the proud son of the Haotian hammer. Without any accidents, it is necessary to become a person with the title of Douluo. Instead of considering how to reflect the enhancement of the blue-silver grass on the Haotian hammer, it is necessary to add a completely useless poison. If it were not for Tang San upgrading the blue-silver grass to the blue-silver emperor in the later stage, and if there were also cheats that could replace these useless soul ring skills, then this martial soul with poison would be useless. The method of adding soul rings to twin martial souls was not developed by oneself, but rather by finding something that BB Dong wanted. Apart from teaching some methods to distinguish the age of soul beasts in the early stage, it was not useful at all in the later stage. No wonder Tang San did not take him to become a god after he became a god. It is estimated that this product is pure waste. The best way to prove one's theory is to make a person with low innate soul power become a title Douluo, but finding someone with full innate soul power who is bound to become a title Douluo as an apprentice is really a way to find a twisted shortcut. Although the level of the Wuhuan Hall in Notting City is not high, the books I have read also have clear records of the methods for identifying the age of various soul beasts. I can do both the martial soul skill route and the identification of the age of soul beasts. Tang San has a friend like me who replaced his childhood missing father's love with friendship, and Yu Xiaojiang's role in Tang San is basically lost. As long as we cut off the line of Yu Xiaojiang, there won't be many opportunities for Shrek scumbags to come into contact, but unfortunately Oscar and Zhu Zhuqing. Finally, it is the capital of slaughter, all the places of evil soul masters. Even if it is truly pure and pure, entering that environment and seeing those corrupt behaviors, those who silently move will be corrupted. Even if the aristocratic realm of Tiando is washed away, it only buries all the problems. In the second part, dividing one's daughter's soul in half should be the root of the disease that fell at that time. As long as we handle the 3 factors that influence Tang San's personality, represented by Tang Hao, you Xiaojiang, Shrek scumbags, and the capital of slaughter. At the worst, we can ensure that we can live a peaceful life without awakening our soul power. A carp stood up from the ground and ran towards his and old Jack's home in the ancient game, reorganizing his thoughts. The next day, the small house of the martial soul hall in the village. A lone wolf, possessed. With a low cry from Su Yuntao, his body swelled up, his bare arms covered in hair, his eyes turning into a faint green, his 10 fingers turning into sharp claws shimmering with cold light, and his white and yellow halos flickered with his breath. All right, everyone step up one by one, don't be afraid, the martial soul will awaken quickly. As each child completed their martial soul awakening, there were fewer and fewer children in the room, and in the end, only Tang San and Gu Yu remained. All right, who will come first, you two? Su Yuntao's voice was a bit tired, but he still wanted to help the two complete their martial soul awakening before going to rest. You go first. Gu Yu gently pushed Tang San, who turned his head. Gu Yu gave Tang San a thumbs up. For some reason, Tang San, who was already a little nervous, suddenly calmed down and smiled at Gu Yu before nodding towards Su Yuntao. Like the original work, Tang San's awakened martial soul is blue-silver grass. Gu Yu also noticed that Tang San's left hand, which had not been extended, was quietly hidden and emitted a faint light. It should still be a twin martial soul. Shocked by Tang San's innate soul power, Su Yuntao tidied up his mood and waved to Gu Yu, come here, you're the last one. Tang San did not leave the house and stood by watching Gu Yu's martial soul awaken. Grip your hands tightly and say, come on, Xiao Yu, you can do it. As the pale golden light shone again, Gu Yu, standing in the light, gently closed his eyes. Suddenly, a crisp sound like an eggshell cracking echoed in his mind, followed by a huge roar. Influenced by the roar in his mind, Gu Yu also looked up and let out a huge roar similar to that of a Tyrannosaurus rex. Accompanied by a roar, Gu Yu's caudal vertebrae gave birth to a tail that was about 1.5 times Gu Yu's height, with sharp spines growing along the spine on the back, extending all the way to the end of the tail. The end of the tail was circular with 5 sharp spines. The feet grew larger and broke through the shoes, while the fingers and toes grew longer and became sharp claws. The roaring mouth cracked along the corner of the mouth, and a dense network of shark-like sharp teeth grew in the mouth. After roaring, Gu Yu slowly lowered his head and opened his eyes, which had turned into golden vertical pupils. Extend your hand to the blue crystal ball in Su Yuntao's hand. I saw the blue crystal ball shining brightly, first. Innate full soul power. Oh my God, 2 innate full soul powers appeared in Holy Soul Village at once. P.S. The martial soul has finally awakened. I believe friends who read the title of this book know what this martial soul is. As a bookworm and card player, I am writing this paragraph with a really excited mood. The protagonist's image is roughly based on the lizard doctor in Spider-Man, which is the ultimate version of the transmission of fear of beasts. Not handsome, but it can bring fear and oppression at a glance. Seeking recommendation, seeking collection, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. After Awakening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. After Awakening. Old Jack is going crazy with joy, it's 2 innate soul powers, Su Yuntao said dumbfounded. What kind of martial soul is this oppressive force? Gu Yu looked at his hands and feet that had turned into claws, turned his head to look at the slender tail behind him, and held it with his right hand. Suddenly, he remembered his favorite game deck and the ace he had played before crossing the river. Fear of beasts, my martial soul is called Ultimate Transmission Fear of Beasts. After finishing speaking, Gu Yu took a deep breath and the changes on his body slowly faded away. Brother Tao, both my junior and I are born with full soul power this year, but there is only 1 quota for working students in the village. So what should we do? Su Yuntao shook his head to wake himself up and said, the ultimate transmission of monsters, a good name. There are also work-study student quotas, yes, there are also work-study student quotas. Xiao Yu, Xiao San, would you like to join the Martial Soul Palace? I will apply with Master Matthano to recommend you to study in the Martial Soul City, ensuring that you can fully develop your talents. Guyu and Tang San exchanged a glance, and Tang San said, I need to go home first and talk to my dad for his advice. I'll wait and decide with Xiao San. Okay, you two have your own ideas, but it's still recommended that you choose the Martial Soul Hall. The Martial Soul City in the Martial Soul Hall has the most soul masters in the world, and there are many excellent soul masters there. Both of you are born with full soul power. It's not impossible to find a teacher named Douluo there. With the ability of the Douluo Lord, we can help you find the most suitable soul beast for you. Xiao Yu, if you like to read books, the Martial Soul City has the most books in the world, which will definitely satisfy you. Thank you, Brother Tao, but I still want to stay with Xiao San. It's not too late for you to think about it in the future. The door of the Martial Soul Hall is always open to you. Su Yuntao pushed open the door and walked towards Old Jack, who was waiting outside the door. Old Jack looked up and down at Guyu and Tang San, and saw that Guyu was almost covered in cloth. He asked Su Yuntao, Master Su, how are these two children doing? Congratulations, Old Jack. Both of these children are born with full soul power. Your family's Xiaoyou's martial soul is the ultimate transmission of fear beasts, and Xiaosan's martial soul is blue silver grass. Really? Old Jack's eyes widened and his lips trembled slightly. Innate soul power. Both of them. Yes, Old Jack, it seems that your village can be renamed Douluo Village in the future. Grandpa, Brother Tao said he wants us to join the Martial Soul Hall and help me and the third party apply to study in the Martial Soul City. The third party said they need to ask Uncle Tang Hao's opinion first, and now I will accompany him to find Uncle Tang Hao. Without waiting for Old Jack to answer, he ran out with Tang San. Wait for me, stinky kid. I'll take you two over when I take the others home, Old Jack cursed. Master Su, you're laughing. This stinky kid is like this, big or small. No problem, Old Jack. I also have several villages to host the Martial Soul Awakening ceremony. Once they have decided, let's take them to the Martial Soul Hall in Nodding City to find Master Matthew Noah. Without waiting for Old Jack to reply, I turned around and left. Guyu dragged Tang San all the way and ran to a small forest. He turned around and found no one around, so he led Tang San into the forest. Guyu pulled Tang San to sit under the bushes and whispered, Xiao San, are we the best friends? Of course, we are best friends. Why did you suddenly pull me here? Tang San asked in confusion. Xiao San, do you know that the quality of a martial soul is usually related to how much innate soul power it has? Even if it is a mutated martial soul, there must be a very obvious change in appearance. Your martial soul blue silver grass has no change, but it has innate full soul power. So Xiao San, can you tell me what your second martial soul is? Tang San widened his eyes in shock. After a while, he took a deep breath and slowly lifted his left hand, with the palm facing upwards. A faint black light surged out of his palm, and a small black hammer slowly emerged. Tang San held the hammer in his left hand, his arm slowly drooping until the hammer was placed on the ground. Is the second martial soul a hammer? No, this shape and feeling. Guyu placed his right hand on his chin and touched it. And this heavy feeling, can we say it's a Haotian hammer? Your second martial soul is a Haotian hammer. Guyu showed a shocked expression and asked Tang San to retract the Haotian hammer. He murmured to himself in a voice that Tang San could hear, a hammer with innate soul power, named Tang Hao, is it? No, it's not reasonable. Why is it in our village? It's unreasonable. So what's going on with the blue silver grass? Its martial soul mutates, and it's equivalent to the Haotian hammer. It's upward, no, it's downward. Its form should be downward, but since it's twin, its essence should still remain unchanged. What's wrong, Xiaoyu? Is there anything wrong with my father's name being Tang Hao? It's like going up and down. Tang San reached out and waved his hand in front of Guyu. First of all, what I'm saying below is just my personal speculation, not necessarily right. Just listen to it. Guyu took a deep breath and said, "You, the Hammer martial soul, may be the famous martial soul of Haotian sect, one of the upper three schools. Haotian Hammer. And your father may be Tang Hao, who inherited the name of Haotian Douluo and became famous a few years ago." Tang San was stunned and said, "Dad, is he titled Douluo?" "This is just my calculation." The latest news from Haotian Douluo happened to be 6 years ago when the Martial Soul Hall announced that the new Haotian Douluo, Tang Hao, had killed the Pope of the Martial Soul Hall, so he issued a wanted order, and Haotian sect even banned him. Grandpa once said that you and Uncle Tang are not from our village. It happened to be 6 years ago when Uncle Tang brought you to the village. Grandpa gave you an unused house and asked Uncle Tang, who was with you, to settle down. Of course, all the previous rumors were just inferred from hearsay, and what really makes me doubt is your twin martial soul. Tang San suppressed his shock and said, "Twin martial souls?" "Yes, mistress, you are a twin martial soul with innate full soul power. Firstly, the quality of your martial soul will affect your innate full soul power. Therefore, your martial soul quality will definitely be high. However, your first martial soul currently appears to be blue-silver grass, and the most likely explanation is that your second martial soul brings you innate full soul power. But Xiaoyu, as you mentioned to me before, twin martial souls are very rare because the prerequisite is that the quality of the two martial souls must be exactly the same. Even if there is only a slight difference, twin martial souls will not appear, and they must all be high-level martial souls. Even if the quality of low-level martial souls is the same, twin martial souls will not appear. My martial soul is blue-silver grass, how can it have the same quality as top-level martial souls like Haotian Hammer? Yes, you're right, so that's my second guess. After a moment of silence, Guyu slowly said, your martial soul is disguised. P.S. As God's perspective, both us and the protagonist of the Traverse know the truth, but in that environment, the protagonist cannot show that they know everything, and can only express it through inference, speculation, and other forms. The protagonist's child prodigy performance and going to the Martial Soul Hall to read a book are first to judge the description in the book and compare it with the real world for him. After all, a little mistake in this world can be fatal, and second is to lay the groundwork for the later plot. The titles of prodigy genius are very useful in these worlds. As it is not a chargeable chapter, it was mentioned in the main text, seeking recommendations and collections. If you have any ideas, feel free to comment and share them, and have a friendly discussion with everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Family Affairs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Family Affairs, Disguise. Yes, disguise. Guyu looked straight into Tang San's eyes. Your father's name is Tang Hao. He only came to our village 6 years ago and has never shown you his martial soul. I am 90% sure that Uncle Tang is the Haotian Douluo, and your martial soul is the Haotian Hammer. In this situation, it is impossible for an ordinary blue-silver grass to form a twin martial soul with the Haotian Hammer. I cannot be certain of the exact time, but what I can guarantee is that if your martial soul can be elevated to 7 rings and the soul saint awakens the true martial soul, you will know what kind of martial soul it is. After listening to Guyu's comments, Tang San said in a daze, if my dad is really a Douluo, why do we live in this small village? He still drinks every day. Xiao San. Guyu forcefully placed his hands on Tang San's shoulder. I don't know why Uncle Tang took you to live in our village and treated you so badly, but I promise that Grandpa Jack and I are both serious about helping you. No matter what happens, I, Guyu, your best brother, will definitely help you. I have shared my thoughts with you. Now go home and tell Uncle Tang about your twin martial souls. If you have any questions, come to me and I will do my best to help you. Remember, when you are lost, don't make decisions hastily, think twice before taking action. Although there was still some confusion in his eyes, Tang San nodded vigorously and ran out of the bushes towards home. After Tang San left, Liu lowered his head and thought to himself, help Tang San to have a deep understanding of himself. After that, Tang Hao's impact on Tang San will not be as strong. Although this is a worse world, if Tang San were to follow the old path and defeat the martial soul hall and establish a sect, what would ordinary people for the next 10,000 years do? Since it can't be worse, then choose a new path to take. Although I have already laid the foundation, Tang San probably still has some obsession with his mother and does not have a good impression of the martial soul hall. Although my identity cannot say that Tang San's mother's death was due to her being a 100,000-year soul beast, there is another way to silently reduce Tang San's malice towards the martial soul hall. After all, the real enemy Qian Xuanji has already died. Will I still have to study in Nodding City? I can only try to join the martial soul hall after graduation. Next, I need to pay attention to dealing with Yu Xiaojiang, so let's focus on how I can become the mentor on Tang San's martial soul journey during the 3 months before school. Also, pay attention to the 100,000-year-old soul beast Xiaowu. In the original work, Tang San and the martial soul hall became enemies of life and death, and Xiaowu was forced to sacrifice to Tang San. As long as you don't let Tang San and Xiaowu have too deep ties, you can do it. However, with Tang Hao present, it is uncertain whether Tang Hao's first thought of seeing a 100,000-year-old soul beast like himself around Tang San is to see her as a replica of himself and the Blue-Silver Emperor, or a pure sacrificial tool. In the end, Tang Hao's view of the Blue-Silver Emperor itself is difficult to determine, and he can only wait and see how it changes. On the other side, Tang San hurriedly ran home. Opening the door, Tang Hao just got up from his bed and was going to the kitchen to drink the congee Tang Sanyi had cooked early. Seeing Tang San return, Tang Hao glanced at him and said, "Xiao San, your martial soul has awakened." "What is it?" "Dad, it's blue-silver grass." Tang San raised his right hand, and a blue light flashed. A crystal-clear little grass floated in Tang San's palm. Blue-silver grass. Tang Hao paused and whispered, blue-silver grass is good." Turning his head, he asked again, "Where is soul power, how many levels?" Tang San lowered his head and answered, "Master Soul said it's innate full soul power." Congenital full soul power. Tang Hao remained silent for a while. "So what about congenital full soul power?" "It's not a useless martial soul yet. Don't be a soul master, just learn to forge iron here." "But, Dad." Tang San looked up, "I seem to have another martial soul." Tang San put down his right hand, and the floating blue-silver grass disappeared in an instant. His left hand lifted up, and a black light flashed. A dark little hammer slowly emerged. "What?" Tang Hao rushed up to Tang San with a swift step, grabbing Tang San's hand holding the hammer. This is twin martial souls. Son, my son." Tang Hao grabbed Tang San into his arms. "Dad." Tang San had never been treated like this by Tang Hao before, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Third, promise me that in the future, you must protect the grass on your right hand with the hammer of your left hand, forever." Tang San didn't know why, but when he saw Tang Hao's expression that had never appeared before, he nodded. Tang Hao saw that Tang San had agreed, so he released Tang San and turned around to walk into the house. I only heard Tang San's voice coming from behind. Xiaoyu has also awakened his soul power. The soul master of the martial soul hall asked us if we should join the martial soul hall. Martial soul hall. Tang Hao's body suddenly froze, and a chill surged in the room. Even the blazing iron stove could not resist. "What do you think?" Tang San couldn't control his body and trembled. "Both Xiaoyu and I felt we needed to consider it, so we refused," he said. Tang Hao nodded, and the chill in the room slowly subsided. If you want to become a soul master, there seems to be a quota for part-time students in the village. You can go to Nodding City Junior Soul Master College to study. Okay, Dad. Tang San nodded and agreed. Tang San once again expressed his desire to learn blacksmith knowledge to Tang Hao. Tang Hao instructed Tang San to study at home every morning and evening, and to go out with Gu Yu in the afternoon. Returning to Gu Yu's side, Gu Yu opened the door and found that old Jack had already taken the children of other villagers home, sitting on a chair with a wooden box on his legs. Xiao Yu, bring a stool and sit in front of me. Old Jack pointed to himself. Seeing old Jack's appearance, Gu Yu remained silent and nodded before moving a chair to sit in front of him. When Gu Yu sat down, old Jack spoke up and said, Xiao Yu, you were born a smart and brave child. When you were 3 years old, you pestered me to take you to the Martial Soul Hall in the city to look for books. You even dared to sneak out when the Martial Soul Hall closed just to read more books. I think you guessed it too. You are the child I adopted. Speaking, old Jack opened the box in front of him and saw a pendant lying quietly in the center of the box, with the word ancient engraved on it. Old Jack gently took out the pendant and gently stroked it. I found this pendant when I found you. The ancient characters on it should be your surname. Because I found you by the river in the village, I took your name as your name. That's where your name comes from. I brought this pendant to the city of Nodding to show it to people. The material is very good, and your background is not simple. I originally planned to bring this secret to the coffin if you didn't awaken your soul power and become a soul master. You just need to live a simple life, but now that you have awakened your soul power and are still born with full soul power, this pendant will return to its original owner. After saying that, old Jack hung the pendant around Gu Yu's neck and touched Gu Yu's head with his hand. Gu Yu lowered his head to look at the pendant that old Jack had put on for him, then lifted his head to see old Jack's moist eyes and wrinkles on his forehead. He threw himself into old Jack's arms and said, I don't care who gave birth to me, but it's Grandpa Yu who raised me and took care of me. No matter where I go in the future and what kind of soul master I become, I will remember that I am Gu Yu, the grandson of Jack, the head of Holy Soul Village. Old Jack's wet eyes were filled with tears. Although Gu Yu was his adopted child, he had already treated him as his own child in the 6 years he spent together. That's why he planned to let Gu Yu live an ordinary and happy life in the village, even if the truth was discovered and Gu Yu would blame him, if he didn't become a soul master. Instead of using this pendant to engage in infighting within the big family, it wasn't the soul master who caused the tragic death. Old Jack held Gu Yu tightly and whispered, good child, good child. In the original work, old Jack had children, and everyone can treat it as a world change caused by a traveler. Also, it's about seeking recommended tickets and collecting them. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Before Enrollment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Before Enrollment. The next day before dawn, Gu Yu arrived at the cliff where Tang San was practicing the purple extreme demon eye. Not long after, Tang San arrived and didn't say much when he saw Gu Yu. He sat down and opened his eyes wide to look in the direction where the sun was about to rise. When Tang San closed his eyes and stood up again, Gu Yu also stood up and asked, Xiao San, how was yesterday? Did Uncle Tang say anything? Tang San twisted his neck and answered, Dad saw my martial soul yesterday and didn't say anything. He only said one thing, I want to use my left hand's hammer to protect the grass on my right hand in the future. Tang San and Gu Yu walked down the mountain along the path and said, I also told him that the soul master of the Martial Soul Hall invited me and you to join the Martial Soul Hall. After hearing this, his emotions were not quite right, but when he heard me say he wanted to consider it, he recovered. Did you say that I am also born with full soul power? No, he didn't ask, so I didn't say it either. From your father's performance, it's very likely that he's Haotian Douluo. He asked you to protect the blue-silver grass with a hammer, which may be because your mother's martial soul is blue-silver grass. Your father didn't protect her well, which is why she is so decadent. Although I don't know why your father didn't tell you his true identity, we are born with full soul power, which means we only need to absorb one soul ring to become true soul masters. There are only two recorded twin martial souls, one is a very ancient person, and the other is the current pope of the Martial Soul Hall. You are the third one. I need to go to the Martial Soul Hall in Notting City to check some information. It's best not to attach soul rings to the martial soul yet. Why? Tang San was puzzled. As long as the martial soul has a soul ring, it can be upgraded and continued cultivation. Why not attach a soul ring for now? Because according to the book, the first person to cultivate twin martial souls exploded and died while absorbing soul rings. Currently, it is known that only the Pope of the contemporary Martial Soul Hall was the first to cultivate twin martial souls to the level of title Douluo. Guyu replied. And I also need to help you plan the development direction of the martial soul, give you a few routes, you choose, and your father probably won't take you to add soul rings if he doesn't tell you the truth, so you must hold back. In the name of the first genius of my holy soul village, I swear that I will make you become the title Douluo of the second twin martial soul smoothly. Seeing Gu Yu's resolute expression, Tang San chuckled and said, all right, the first day, I believe in you. My soul ring pairing is up to you. Wrap it around me. All of this, in addition to chatting and fishing every afternoon, 3 months passed by in a blink of an eye while constantly flipping through books, and Tang San was learning about forging knowledge in Gu Yu. The afternoon before departure, Gu invited Tang San to come to this deserted pond. 3 months of studying and forging iron have made Tang San's originally fair face rough. Gu said, tomorrow I'm going to study in Notting City, Xiao San. In the past 3 months, I have prepared several directions for the development of your and my martial souls. You need to decide how to develop your 2 martial souls. Upon hearing these words, Tang San, who was originally relaxing on the grass, immediately sat up straight and eagerly looked at Gu Yu. Xiao San, you are different from me. You have 2 martial souls and are born with full soul power. This means that if there are no accidents, you can cultivate to the level of title Douluo and have a full 18 soul skills. First of all, my suggestion is that you prioritize cultivating the blue-silver grass soul before practicing the Haotian hammer. Among them, the blue-silver grass uses the amplification type auxiliary system, while the Haotian hammer uses the station type strong attack system. What are the categories of martial souls? Boost type auxiliary type and station type strong attack type. You mentioned that there are strong attack type, sensitive attack type, control type, auxiliary type, as well as the relatively rare defense type and food type. Xiao San, this is a new classification that I have proposed after careful consideration over the past 3 months, which is a more detailed classification of the original soul masters. Firstly, there is the strong attack system, which usually categorizes all soul masters who focus on attack and have relatively slow speeds as the strong attack system. I have looked at a large number of soul master records in the Martial Soul Hall and found that the martial souls are wolves, bears, and those with swords or hammers are all called strong attack soul masters. Gu Yu paused and said, there's a problem. Even if the soul skills of these martial souls are mainly focused on attack, the damage they cause and the way they do it are completely different. For example, if a martial soul is a bear's soul master, the first soul skills effect combines defense enhancement and power enhancement, then he is undoubtedly a strong attack type soul master. However, if your martial soul Haotian hammer, will you add a soul skill that enhances both defense and attack strength? It's impossible because the hammer is a handheld attack weapon soul, and the additional defense enhancement's protection ability is not as much as that of a beast martial soul. The comparison between wolf martial soul and bear martial soul is the same, even if they have the same soul skill, the benefits during battles are not the same. No matter how you look at it, bear martial soul is better at taking damage. So I have divided the categories and development directions of martial souls in more detail. Now that I only have one afternoon, I won't go into detail with you about my ideas. Let's first talk about your martial soul development direction. Firstly, there is blue-silver grass, which has two major directions for the development of this martial soul. One is the auxiliary system and the other is the control system. First of all, let me talk about the development of control systems that I do not recommend. From the characteristics of martial souls themselves, blue-silver grass does not have the characteristics of other common plant-based martial souls, such as the strength of vines or the diversification ability of flowers. Therefore, if you want to follow the path of control systems, you must add control capabilities to blue-silver grass. What are the effective abilities that can add control to blue-silver grass? After speaking, Douluo extended a finger and said, one word, poison. Blue-silver grass wants to control others, but its own strength is far inferior to that of vines. Therefore, it can only add poison to compensate for its lack of control. However, blue-silver grass itself does not carry poison, so it is necessary to take a dual approach and consider a soul ring that can both increase blue-silver grass's strength and carry poison. The conclusion is that snakes, the snake-type soul beasts in Animal series, meet both of these requirements. Xiao-san, I believe some mediocre masters will ask you to attach an animal-tied poison soul ring to blue-silver grass, allowing you to embark on the path of controlling soul masters. Their reference points are completely different from yours, such as vines or ropes of martial souls. But you should know that blue-silver grass is different from those martial souls. Although it is weak, it has strong vitality and super-strong reproductive and growth speed. That is why it is suitable for auxiliary systems. Seeking recommended tickets and collecting them, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Growth Direction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Growth Direction. Third, you need to take a long-term perspective. If your future is not unexpected, it will be a title Douluo. If you choose the control system, the simplest question is whether your martial soul can support 9 soul rings, all of which are poisonous, and not let your martial soul be dragged down by soul rings and corrupted by soul skills. And, mistress, I believe you have tried using 2 martial souls at the same time, haven't you? Called out one, and the other couldn't be activated. Tang-san nodded. If you choose the control system, no matter how strong you are, you cannot use blue-silver grass to control enemies and use Haotian hammer to knock them down at the same time. Moreover, if you cannot add toxins to all your martial souls, you can only rely on the poison of the first few soul skills to control enemies who are also titled Douluo. Therefore, if you want to choose the control system, you will be very outstanding before the 70th level of martial soul true body. Once you reach the soul holy awakening martial soul true body, the strength of blue-silver grass is not enough to pull others, and the poison is also suppressed by people of the same level with strong soul power. Then your blue-silver grass martial soul will become stronger than you and cannot win, just like you. Those who are at a higher level are more likely to lose, while those who are weaker than you win slowly. They also carry the risk of being backfired by toxins. Tang-san was frightened by this idea and quickly asked, then I won't go to the control department. What will happen if I go to the auxiliary department? Douluo slowed down and continued, the auxiliary system is to fully utilize the strong and numerous characteristics of blue-silver grass's vitality. By passing the vitality to teammates, it can restore their injuries, and may even have an effect on soul power recovery. Moreover, the soul skill effects of the auxiliary system also help you better use the second martial soul Haotian hammer. In addition to providing soul skills, the soul ring can also silently reflect the characteristics of soul skills on the soul master. That is to say, if the additional soul skills of blue-silver grass are to restore vitality, your own vitality will also become stronger. Finally, if you follow the path of the auxiliary system, the soul ring will be identified as a soul beast with outstanding vitality in the plant system. According to my research, soul rings have a certain impact on martial souls, which may help your blue-silver grass show its true form. Tang-san fell silent for a moment, pondered for a moment, and then asked, so, what about the Haotian hammer? How do I attach a soul ring to my Haotian hammer? Xiao San, my suggestion is to purely strengthen the aspect of strength. The various materials I have reviewed indicate that the users of the Haotian hammer throughout history have mainly focused on strength, emphasizing the importance of breaking 10,000 laws with one force. However, I noticed that you seem to enjoy forging very much. You've been telling me all this time about learning how to forge iron. Yes, I like forging iron. Is there any problem? Tang San asked in confusion. Guyu shook his head and said, I've been thinking about it again these past few days. The recorded users of the Haotian hammer were all recorded because of their strong combat power, which has fixed the strengthening root of the Haotian hammer as the warhammer. But mistress, if you see the Haotian hammer as a tool that can help you forge better, then it's different. How to say it? Firstly, the elements of forging include strength, skill, and temperature. Without a suitable temperature, the requirements for strength and skill will increase significantly. If you want to move forward along the path of forging, then the soul ring of the Haotian hammer cannot be pure power, but needs to add fire attributes. The hammer itself has a flame, which can better smelt metals. Although this kind of Haotian hammer cannot be said to be the world's first martial soul weapon, with this unique Haotian hammer, you have a good chance of becoming the world's top forging master. Xiao San, I know you are currently very conflicted and difficult to choose, but there is not enough time now. I will explain my thoughts to you carefully, but this is a very important choice. Whether blue-silver grass will follow the control or auxiliary route, and whether the Haotian hammer will be famous as a combat soul or a forging hammer, all of which require you to carefully consider before making a reply. Tang San nodded and said, Thank you, Xiao Yu, for thinking so much for me. It's okay. As I said, we are brothers, and I will always be your support. Tang San looked at Guyu with emotion and asked, What about your martial soul? Which direction is the ultimate transmission of the fearsome beast martial soul preparing to develop? I have tested my martial soul ultimate transmission fearsome beast and found that it has outstanding strength, endurance, and defense, poor speed, and special energy attack methods. Therefore, considering the above characteristics, I plan to use the soul ring combination of the station field strong attack system. Xiao San, after we arrive at the Junior Soul Master Academy in Notting City tomorrow, I hope you can become my assistant and help me study martial soul knowledge together. After saying this, Guyu stood up, turned around, and extended his right hand to Tang San. Give me a hand, mistress, we will change this world. Tang San thought of his father's wish to work at a blacksmith's shop in the city, and then saw Guyu reaching out to his right hand. Looking at the smile on Guyu's face, Tang San thought of his past life at Tangmen. Although he was confident that he had the greatest talent for hidden weapons in Tangmen, as an outsider disciple, he could not access the core martial arts and hidden weapon techniques. He could only secretly learn and create a successful one, then jump off the cliff and return Tangmen's kindness to him using the three highest techniques of the outsider, the Buddha Anger Tang Lotus. After being reincarnated into this brand new world, the physical father never gave warmth to his own home. Not only did he live in a poor place, but he could only drink porridge frequently. After awakening his martial soul, he only spoke of blue-silver grass and innate full soul power. He didn't want to become a soul master and only saw himself as a child after showcasing his twin martial souls, giving him his first hug since birth. I also remembered being isolated by other children in the village and being secretly gossiped about by other villagers. Although I didn't want to have any interaction with them, my heart was still filled with resentment. But soon, the unpleasant memories and resentment slowly faded away. Tang San remembered being stopped by Guyu while walking alone on the road. Although he treated him coldly at that time, Guyu not only did not leave, but also warmly invited him to go fishing together. He also learned that his family conditions were not good, so he often invited himself to eat at his house. The fish he caught were said to be tired of eating and all were taken away by him. Compared to his father and good brothers in his mind, Tang San slowly raised his right hand, tightly grasped Gu Yu's hand, and stood up with force. "Of course, as you said, we are brothers." After speaking, the two exchanged a glance and laughed heartily. Human heart is complex, even the best friend can have waves when it comes to personal interests. That's probably all for the sake of avoiding spoilers. Finally, it's better to seek recommended tickets and collect them. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Refuting the Master Theory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Refuting the Master Theory. The next morning, Gu Yu and Tang San followed old Jack to borrow a carriage from the villagers and rushed to Notting City. "Xiao San, we will probably arrive in Notting City in the afternoon. You and Xiao Yu should rest well in the car." Old Jack knew that Tang San had never left Holy Soul Village and was worried that he would not be able to resist loneliness, so he gave him an early warning. After Tang San said, "Good," he continued to listen to Gu Yu's explanation of his Soul Master theory. "Xiao San, yesterday I briefly talked to you about my new division of martial souls. Considering that I will be going to school in a few days, in order to prevent the teacher's knowledge in the college from having a preconceived impact on you, I will first share my new thinking on martial souls with you." After confirming that Tang San was listening attentively to what he was saying, Gu Yu continued. "In recent years, when it comes to the study of martial souls, one person who must be mentioned is Yu Xiaojiang, nicknamed Master, who proposed the theory of 10 core competitiveness of martial souls. These 10 points are: firstly, each person's martial soul can only inherit the stronger and more outstanding one from both parents. Secondly, there is a very low probability that the martial soul undergoes mutation during the inheritance process, which can be both good and bad. Thirdly, the awakening of soul power is often related to the quality of martial souls. The better the martial soul, the higher the innate soul power. Fourth, the advancement of soul masters requires obtaining soul rings, which are divided into 5 levels according to the years of producing soul beasts. 10 years of white, 100 years of yellow, 1,000 years of purple, 10,000 years of black, and the last 100,000 years of red. Fifth, soul masters have their own development direction and should choose their own development direction for training based on their own martial soul characteristics. Sixth, when the soul master reaches the bottleneck of cultivation, even if they do not immediately obtain the soul ring, continuing cultivation will not affect the improvement of soul power. 7. Martial souls are divided into instrumental martial souls and beast martial souls. Before level 70, beast martial souls are stronger than instrumental martial souls, and after level 70, instrumental martial souls are stronger than beast martial souls. 8. There are no abandoned martial souls in the world, only abandoned soul masters. 9. There is no limit to the absorption of soul rings by martial souls. Even plant-based martial souls can absorb soul rings from animal-based soul beasts. 10. Even completely different martial souls may give birth to the fusion technique of martial souls. After finishing Yu Xiaojiang's 10 core competitiveness of martial souls, in one breath, Gu Yu watched Tang San fall into thought and asked, "San, do you think there are any problems here?" "It sounds quite right, I don't think there's any problem," Tang San thought for a moment and replied. "That's right, mistress. It just sounds quite right. That's where this person's talent lies. He mixed completely meaningless things into some correct theories, and what he blended together is the top 10 competitive strengths we see now. First of all, mistress, do you remember that the awakened martial soul in our village is also a little girl from the blue silver grass? Remember, what's going on? Firstly, blue silver grass is currently recognized as one of the most useless martial souls, and you should be aware of this. Without a martial soul, one's quality is worse than that of blue silver grass. This means that as long as both parents' martial souls are not blue silver grass, the child's awakened martial soul cannot be blue silver grass. Even a stone is superior to blue silver grass in terms of martial soul quality. However, the little girl still awakened the blue silver grass martial soul, and I have also asked her grandfather about her parents' martial souls. Her father's martial soul is blue silver grass, but her mother's martial soul is embroidery needle. According to Yu Xiaojiang's theory, the awakened martial soul should be embroidery needle, so this theory is problematic. Then there is the third point, that the quality of martial souls is related to innate soul power, which is clearly not correct. Martial souls inherited by the same family's bloodline also have a distinction between high and low innate soul power. If it is said that the bloodline of beast martial souls also affects the quality of martial souls, then the family of weapon martial souls cannot justify it completely. Perhaps your hammer comes from a sect, and not everyone is born with full soul power. When Guyu said the last sentence, he lowered his voice and leaned in Tang San's ear before saying it. Tang San turned his head to look at old Jack, who had no idea that the two children in the car had just revealed a huge secret and were still calmly driving the carriage. Tang San gratefully glanced at Guyu. Guyu blinked and gave a thumbs up, as if saying, "Don't worry, I didn't reveal your secret to anyone." There is also the sixth point, which doesn't matter at all. If you reach the bottleneck and don't promote yourself, continuing to cultivate can also enhance your soul power. There are no such examples in the books of the Martial Soul Palace, and his published books and articles have not mentioned any examples. The seventh point goes without saying that the strength of each martial soul should consider the user's quality, and the selection of soul rings and the restraint relationship of the martial soul also have an impact on battles. A level 70, weapon soul saint who has never had any combat experience and a level 50 beast martial soul king with rich combat experience have a high probability of not being able to defeat the soul king even if they have a true martial soul saint. Article 8. There are no useless martial souls, only useless soul masters. Little 3, what do you think of this sentence? Tang San lowered his head for a moment of contemplation, then raised his head to answer. It roughly means that each martial soul has its own strengths and weaknesses. An excellent soul master can utilize the strengths of martial souls to avoid weaknesses, right? That's right, just looking at this sentence, it does mean that, but I have to tell you, mistress, that a master who said this sentence himself is only a level 29 soul master, and he hasn't been able to reach level 30 for decades. What? Tang San was shocked, unable to believe that someone who could say such a thing was just a great soul master, a person who had reached level 29 decades ago but not level 30. Gu Yuyao said, "This is true. Yu Xiaojiang is currently in Notting City and I heard he is temporarily staying at the Soul Master Academy we are going to. According to Grandpa Ma Zayunuo from the Martial Soul Hall, he has been receiving subsidies from the Great Soul Master for decades and has been receiving them ever since. A person who has not been able to ascend from a great soul master to a soul master for decades can say such words. Is he indicating that he is a useless soul master? This statement can prove itself to be a paradox when used on him. There is also the ninth point, what does a plant-type martial soul mean that it can absorb animal-type soul rings? If the martial soul is a sword, what should be done? Will a yellow soul ring appear after smashing an antique sword that has been in use for 100 years? It is not clear whether the selection of soul rings is more based on physical appearance than on animals or plants. Finally, there are the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 10th articles, which were completely plagiarized from the books of the Martial Soul Hall. The 2nd article comes from the work of a soul saint in the past who was known as the Book Saint. It is said that the martial soul is a book and he has deep research on both martial souls and soul beasts. His book, On the Relationship Between Martial Soul Awakening and Parents, mentions the variation of martial souls, and this 2nd article is the original text of the book. The 4th and 5th articles are both in ancient books, and the author can't find the exact same words in the two books, Soul Beast and Soul Ring, and the advantages and disadvantages of soul ring matching and Wulin. Finally, there is the 10th point, which comes from a book called Soul Master's Strongest Technique. Martial Soul Fusion Technique. The book extensively records all the martial soul fusion techniques that the author has learned about. Finally, He points out that the birth of martial soul fusion techniques does not follow a pattern and is not related to the martial souls of both sides. There are two types of martial soul fusion techniques that can exist, and even if someone else has a completely identical martial soul, it may not necessarily result in martial soul fusion. It is entirely a product of chance. P.S. Next, there will be a long section describing the protagonist's understanding and thoughts on martial souls and soul masters. I will finish this paragraph as soon as possible, just don't abandon the book. I am looking for a recommendation ticket and a collection. Does anyone know how to make the book cover? If you know, please leave a comment and let me know. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. New World Pioneers 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 New World Pioneers 1. After listening to Guyu's evaluation of the top 10 competitiveness of martial soul core, Tang Sen felt unbelievable. A person with the title of Master never expected that his most famous theory would be refuted one by a 6-year-old child with reason and evidence. Tang San was a person who believed he had a unique advantage. Although Guyu and old Jack took good care of him, he still believed that his relationship with Guyu was under his own control and that his older brother was accommodating his younger brother. But I didn't expect that in the past 6 years, besides going to the city to read books, the ancient tour that has been fishing with me all the time can achieve this. Besides the Tang sect's unique skills brought by my past life, I have achieved nothing in these 6 years. Even the martial soul knowledge in this world was taught by Guyu, whom I consider my younger brother. It seems that I have been brought into this new world by Guyu. Although there is now a father who is suspected to be titled Douluo, the Guyu family has been taking good care of themselves before this, but they have never repaid it. Thinking of this, Tang San made a decision in his heart. Seeing Tang San suddenly bowing his head and remaining silent, Guyu was confused and said, "Isn't it just that you made that master's theory worthless? You're not a student of this kind, so I wouldn't just be taken to death. I have been turning over books in the Wulin Hall for so many years. I didn't take the college entrance examination so seriously that year. I did see that his theory was exactly the same in the original text in other people's books. I don't know why no one put forward it. Is there no one in this world who reads books? Even books can be printed freely, and even small cities like Notting City have a large number of printed books in the Martial Soul Hall collection. However, besides the administrator, I haven't seen many people enter here, and what I see is only books like Soul Beast Illustrated." Tang San cleared his mind and asked, "So what did you think?" Upon hearing Tang San's question, Guyu also set aside his chaotic thoughts and replied, "I haven't received my first soul ring yet. Many of my thoughts are that I have to wait until I receive my first soul ring before I can have any ideas. However, the books I have read in the past few years are enough for me to propose several relatively broad theories. Firstly, according to the current trend of soul skill combinations, except for a few special martial souls, soul masters of any genre have two development directions, namely the omnipotent and specialized types. The so-called all-around type does not mean that the soul skills of this martial soul can do anything. After all, a martial soul can only attach 9 soul rings to obtain 9 soul skills, but rather, while maintaining the same overall direction, it can obtain additional skill applications from other genres. Let me give you an example. If a person's martial soul is a rope, and they grow into a control-type soul master, then their first soul skill is likely to be controlling the rope to bind the enemy. This soul skill will become the foundation for him as a control-type soul master. He can use ropes to entangle enemies and affect their movements, as well as tie them to his teammates' waist and change their position by pulling and pulling. Then, if this soul master wants to continue improving his control, what is the solution? Upon hearing Guyu ask him a question, Tang San's first reaction as a Tang sect disciple blurted out, "Poison." But in an instant, I realized that as a child from a village, how could I be the first to think of using poison? I immediately added, "You can make the rope stronger." Guyu, who knew Tang San's background, didn't pay attention, and old Jack didn't hear the two of them talking inside while driving. Yes, making the rope itself stronger and adding poison to the rope can enhance control. A stronger rope makes it difficult for enemies to break free, while adding poison to the rope can make the person who touches the rope weaker or even die. However, mistress, have you noticed that in this way, the rope soul has gained the attack ability of the attack type soul and the auxiliary ability of the auxiliary type soul? A stronger rope can be used as a whip, and if you think about it in reverse with poison, it can be replaced with a soul skill with an exhilarating effect. Binding it to teammates can strengthen their abilities. You see, only 4 soul skills are needed. The first soul skill allows the rope to wrap around the person's body, the second soul skill enhances the strength of the rope, the third soul skill makes the rope poisonous, and the fourth soul skill makes the rope have an exhilarating effect, which can make a control-type martial soul have both attacking and auxiliary abilities. This is an all-around soul master. That is, besides one's own department, one can also achieve some abilities in other departments. Another type is specialization, which means ignoring all possibilities and strengthening one's own advantages without limitations, so as to ensure that there is an advantage in one aspect when facing any situation. The most famous and typical martial soul among them is the Haotian hammer. According to records, users who have inherited the Haotian Douluo throughout history have all added power to their soul rings. This gives Haotian hammer the upper hand in pure power when facing all enemies, ensuring its lethality. This is the specialized soul master, who ensures that he has an advantage in any situation and wins through the competition of advantages. After listening to Gu Yu's comparison between the two, Tang San asked again, what are those special martial souls? What are the differences in their soul skill combinations? Upon hearing this, Gu Yu replied, these special martial souls are usually unable to obtain soul skills normally. The most famous one is the famous martial soul of the Seven Treasures Glass sect, which is on par with the Haotian sect and is also known as the Blue Electric Overlord sect and the Haotian sect. Due to its inherent characteristics, the Seven Treasures Glass Pagoda can only be used as an auxiliary type of martial soul. Regardless of one's own wishes or the soul ring of any soul beast attached, the effect is to enhance certain abilities, such as increasing strength, speed, and defense. But the scary thing is that the ability enhanced by the previous soul ring will increase with the number of soul rings. For example, if the first soul ring increases strength by 10%, and the second soul ring increases speed by 20%, then the power enhanced by the first soul ring will also become 20%. Unfortunately, due to obtaining this terrifying auxiliary ability, the cost is that one can only upgrade to Soul Saint, and no matter what, they cannot be upgraded to 8th ring Soul Douluo. The other one is also a healing type martial soul, named Jiushin Haitang. The soul skill has only one effect, which is healing. According to records, its healing ability far exceeds all other healing type martial souls of the same level. However, the cost is that there can only be 2 nine-hearted begonia soul masters at the same time, and only when one of them dies can the next soul master awaken from nine-hearted begonia appear. From now on, the hidden cheats of the protagonist will officially demonstrate their power. If the powerful martial soul ultimate transmission of fear of beasts and the plot learned from a third perspective are exposed as cheats. So the scientific knowledge, data collection, logical analysis, and the ability to make hypotheses from modern society are the first hidden cheats. These seemingly useless things learned in the classroom, in modern society, become something that everyone has, so they feel meaningless except for far surpassing others. But in this social environment similar to ancient times, abilities from modern times are like a dimensionality reduction blow, displaying incredible charm. Seeking recommended tickets and collecting them, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. New World Pioneers 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 New World Pioneers 2, Is There Such a Thing? Tang San was very shocked by this. He didn't expect that the martial soul would still have these restrictions. It's amazing, isn't it? This is the martial soul. Guyu spread out his hand and said, I have searched through all the books in the Soul Hall of Nodding City, and none of them mention how the soul was born. It seems that the soul should have existed, and no one is curious about who the first soul was and how it was born. Tang San has a deep understanding of this. No one in the previous life possessed this magical power, and no one knew that when he first walked out of the house after arriving in this world, he saw a strong man waving his hand and suddenly appearing with a hoe to start hoeing the field, while the woman on the other side waved his hand and appeared with a sickle to start cutting the wheat, bringing him the impact. Cough cough, I've gone too far. Let's get back to the main topic, the advantages and disadvantages of the versatile and specialized types. Guyu pretended to cough for a moment. The advantages and disadvantages of the versatile and specialized types are exactly the opposite. The advantage of the all-around type is its diverse functions, and its various abilities enable it to handle most of the problems encountered in various ways. However, the disadvantage is that in combat, especially when the opponent is a specialized type, unless there is obvious restraint in abilities, the all-around type is unable to cope with the advantages of the specialized type. Usually, it is difficult for the all-around type to win against the specialized type in a 1-on-1 situation. On the other hand, the specialized type is the opposite. In addition to easily winning through advantage projects during battles, failure becomes an unquestionable thing when advantage projects cannot be obtained or are completely restrained. There may even be extreme situations where no matter what, there is no possibility of victory. The versatile type is relatively rare. For example, Xiaosan's blue-silver grass. If you want to follow the path of controlling soul masters, it is highly likely to develop towards omnipotence, just like the example of rope martial souls I mentioned earlier, by replacing the rope with a longer blue-silver grass and completing control through binding and poison. The flaw is that once you encounter a specialized attack type or a higher-level beast soul master than you, whether it is a strong attack or a sensitive attack, the same level can withstand your poison through the strengthened body of the beast soul. Then, the strong attack type can directly break through the blue-silver grass and launch an attack on you, while the sensitive attack type can directly attack you by avoiding the blue-silver grass. However, if blue-silver grass adopts a specialized type, it cannot develop into a control system because blue-silver grass itself is not strong enough, so multiple methods must be used to compensate for the shortcomings and complete control. However, following the development path of auxiliary systems can lead to becoming a specialized soul master, focusing on the vitality of blue-silver grass itself. By strengthening its vitality, it can achieve both strengthening and healing. On the other hand, vitality can also enhance the strength of blue-silver grass, and at a certain level, flourishing blue-silver grass can also control enemies. Guyu once again lowered his voice and said, finally, I believe that vitality may be the key factor in your true posture of awakening your martial soul. If blue-silver grass really exists in power, the most likely thing is to rely on its strong vitality to dominate all blue-silver grasses blue-silver king. Although Guyu knew that Tang San's blue-silver grass was essentially the blue-silver emperor, he is still just a child who has just left the Holy Soul Village. Although he thinks he has read the books of the Martial Soul Hall, his identity represents that he cannot know the complete truth, and can only say a related but not entirely correct answer. After listening to Guyu's words, Tang Sanquan balanced the advantages and disadvantages of two development directions. The day before leaving the village, Guyu had mentioned the comparison between the control-type blue-silver grass and the auxiliary-type blue-silver grass. That night, he had been pondering, but could not get an answer. Now Guyu has further explained to him the advantages and disadvantages of the two development directions, but he is even more confused. The arrogance of Tang San's adventure made him believe that even if he followed the path of controlling the Soul Master, combined with the Tang clan hidden weapons he had learned in his previous life, he could still stand out. But there are also concerns about the power that hidden weapons can exert in this world. Thinking of the hand reaching out to him, Tang San confirmed his decision again. Xiao Yu, let me show you something first. After speaking, Tang San pulled Gu Yu to his side and confirmed that old Jack was not listening to his conversation with Gu Yu. He pulled up the long sleeve of his left hand and showed Gu Yu the first hidden weapon crafted on Douluo continent, the sleeve arrow. Seeing Gu Yu's curious gaze, Tang San whispered, "I learned this from an old man passing by the village, called a hidden weapon. This is one of the hidden weapons called the sleeve arrow, which can be silently launched to kill enemies with some special techniques." Seeing Gu Yu's widened eyes, Tang San felt a hint of satisfaction in his heart. He thought that for so many years, Gu Yu had been preaching various things to him, and now it was finally his turn as a Tang sect disciple to bring some shock to Gu Yu. But the fact is completely different from what Tang San thought. Gu Yu was shocked that Tang San was willing to tell him about the hidden weapon. In the original work, even if it was Yu Shaojiang or Tang Hao, Tang San did not say where his hidden weapon came from. In order to make himself accepted, Tang San even lied that an old man had taught him. "Thank you for the blessing of the red flag, it's stable now," Gu Yu silently recited in his heart. "That old man also taught me a special body technique. I use body techniques to avoid attacks and deal damage with hidden weapons. Can I also use the control system?" Tang San asked. Gu Yu didn't expect that after saying so much, Tang San still wanted to go through the control system. It seems that Tang San inherently has a desire for control. That's true, if your blue-silver grass soul, along with your body method and hidden weapons, is enough for you to become an excellent control soul master. Gu Yu paused, but don't forget the other one. You also need a soul ring, and the blue-silver grass walking assist system effectively reduces the side effects of adding another soul ring when providing feedback on your own vitality. Side effects. Tang San was puzzled, do soul rings still have side effects? That's right, Gu Yu nodded. According to records, soul rings are products of soul beasts after their death, carrying a strong resentment towards those who kill their lives. This resentment not only causes a strong spiritual impact on soul masters, but also damages their bodies. When you arrive at the title Douluo, another additional soul ring will be the 10,000 years, and that spiritual shock will be very terrifying. The blue-silver grass that controls the development of the system cannot be of any help to you personally. The lack of damage in blue-silver grass can be compensated by your hidden weapon, and it's not a problem when you give another additional soul ring damage. After listening to Gu Yu's arrangement of blue-silver grass, Tang San became even more curious about Gu Yu's view of his hammer. What about the other one, How? What should we do about that? I tried the new dinosaur card, and the strength is pretty good. I'm waiting for Jian Zhong. I have been writing for 5 days, and I don't know if it's good or bad even if it's 32 collections. Does anyone like my idea? I'm a bit scared. Finally, I will continue to seek recommended tickets and collect them. End of this chapter.